Mount Gundabad was an Orc mountain stronghold based in the northern end of the Misty Mountains. But this mountain was not always occupied by Orcs, and it actually has an extremely interesting and important history that we will explore today. Let's get into it.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
The earliest information we have on Mount Gundabad goes all the way back before the Dwarves, before even the Elves. Aule had created Durin the First, also known as Durin the Deathless. He was sent to sleep alone beneath Mount Gundabad in Middle-earth until the Elves awoke. He then awoke during the Years of the Trees. But because he awoke there alone, he did not stay. He walked south until he founded Khazad-dûm, and the Line of Durin, the most famous line of all the Dwarves. Mount Gundabad then remained a special and sacred place to the Dwarves ever after the Awakening. Although Dwarves never actually made any sort of permanent residence in Gundabad, it had been used as sort of a place of assembly and delegation of Dwarves. That is pretty much all the information that Tolkien ever gave us about Gundabad during its time as a Dwarven mountain, but interestingly, it's actually its fall to Orcs that began an age of ongoing hatred between the Dwarves and the Orcs. The second had been Mount Gundabad, which was therefore revered by the Dwarves, and its occupation in the Third Age by the Orcs of Sauron was one of the chief reasons for their great hatred of the Orcs. But getting slightly ahead there, as it was actually in the year 1695 of the Second Age that Sauron had invaded Eriador, and in 1697 had conquered Eregion and was looking likely that he would overwhelm Elrond. But he was attacked from the rear by Dwarven forces sent from Khazad-dûm. Sauron's forces drove the dwarves back, but could not breach the doors of Durin. This angered Sauron, and in his frustration, he ordered that any and all dwarves that could be found be killed. With this came the first sacking of Gundabad. An army of orcs led by servants of Sauron invaded Mount Gundabad and drove the long-bearded dwarves away from their sacred holy site. As a result of this, the Grey Mountains were infested with orcs and communication between Khazad-dûm and the Iron Hills was cut off. This was followed by a long occupation by Orcs. Later in the Third Age, around the year 1300, the realm of Angmar had arisen, and its lands actually lay on both sides of the Misty Mountains, which made Mount Gundabad part of its domain. However, after the fall of Angmar in 1975, it remained populated solely by Orcs. Then, for the next key point in its history, we must look at the death of Thror, the former king of the Longbeards. He was killed by Orc chieftain Azog in the year 2790 of the Third Age, and this was huge. It sent a shockwave throughout the entire Dwarven race, unlike anything had before, mainly due to the manner of disrespect in which he had been killed. Thror's body had been flung down the steps. His severed head lay face downward on the ground. As he knelt there, his companion Nar could see the name Azog branded across his forehead in Dwarvish runes. An orc then threw a small purse of coins at him, calling him a beggar. Nar fled while orcs emerged and hacked Thror's body into pieces and fed them to the crows. At his son Thrain II's behest, all 7 houses were rallied, and in 3 years the host was gathered and set out to avenge the death of Thror. It is insinuated that when the coalition set out for war, the first place that they targeted was Mount Gundabad, for the war lasted 6 years, and the Dwarven campaign seems to have been one that started in the far north, and place by place they made their way down the south. It can therefore be assumed that Gundabad was set upon initially in the outset. However, what this meant was although they annihilated all of the orcs that they could find in Gundabad as their host continued south on the Crusade of Vengeance down the Misty Mountains, the land was left unoccupied. And at some point, during or after the war, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains just returned to their self-proclaimed capital, and established it once again as their stronghold. It was from here that the great goblin horde present at the Battle of the Five Armies attacked and marched from. Their leader, Bolg, son of Azog, was the supreme commander of Orcs from Gundabad, and presumably all of the northern Misty Mountains. Although they lost a huge amount of their number in this battle, Mount Gundabad still belonged to the Orcs right up to the end of the Third Age, though they were at an extremely reduced state, which is why I find it very strange that they was never reclaimed by the Dwarves, though it can be assumed that maybe it was after the War of the Ring. I should also mention the version of Gundabad that is featured quite heavily in the Hobbit movie trilogy. In the trilogy, it's shown to be more of an actual fortress than a mountain. Legolas also mentions in the film that his people fought a battle there in another age, and that his mother was killed there. I think this is an acceptable bit of information to add as a backstory for him, but please don't take this as Tolkien lore, as we actually know next to nothing about Legolas' mother. And of course, we don't even know if Legolas was present during the Battle of the Five Armies. Though I can imagine if Tolkien had finished his latest version of The Hobbit before he died, he would likely have included him, even if it was just in a passing sentence so that we know he was there. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the history of Gundabad. Something that is often asked is how and why are the orcs from Gundabad so much stronger and larger than regular orcs, almost comparable to that of the Uruk-hai? Well, we do actually have a fairly old video that attempts to answer that question, so if that's a question you have, feel free to go and watch that video. Hopefully it answers the question for you. So my question for you guys today is this: if the dwarves did reclaim Mount Gundabad after the War of the Ring, why do you think it took them so long? This is a place of great importance to their entire race, and knowing that there were very, very few orcs left in there after the Battle of the Five Armies, it would surely just be theirs for the taking. Were they just busy, or had they lost interest in it? Perhaps the knowledge of the importance of the mountain had long since been forgotten as years went by. Let us know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. That's it from me today, my friends. As always, I would love to thank all of our patrons and channel members for your support. It would really be hard to continue doing this all the time, full time, if it wasn't for all of your extra support. I know many of you are looking for updates on our upcoming short film, but of course it's been a very slow year with everything that's gone on, both throughout the world and personally, but we will be getting to it, don't you worry, and as soon as we are at work in production, you guys will be getting weekly updates. A very quick reminder before I go to check out our other channels. We have the Batcave for Batman and DC content, we have the 6th Ranger for Power Rangers content, and History of Dragon Ball for some anime lore. Finally, we are currently working and presenting on Attitude Wrestling, so there's loads of stuff there that you can sink your teeth into if any of them interest you. Thank you all so much for watching today, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.